You're listening to Cattywampus.
So, yeah, who here likes Final Fantasy?
Me.
I do.
A lot.
Somebody give me a brief overview of Final Fantasy as a concept.
A brief overview.
Yeah, like, for anyone who's never, like, who maybe has seen that name on a game title, but they don't really know what it is.
So way back in the day, there was a company called Square, and they made games that were honestly kind of shitty. They weren't great.
What were they making before Final Fantasy?
Crappy little RPG titles that weren't going anywhere. So Final Fantasy as a concept was a game that they were putting it out there because it was literally probably going to be their last game.
Yeah, it was like a last ditch effort. Like we're gonna make one game. We're gonna pour our heart and soul into it, and if it sucks, it sucks. But it's our Final Fantasy.
This is it.
It's the Final Fantasy,
and it ended up selling incredibly well.
And it's funny because Final Fantasy 1 still holds up and is still a very good game.
People don't know, they are science fiction fantasy RPGs, but they are disconnected from each other. So like Final Fantasy 2 is not a sequel to Final Fantasy. They are
Correct.
They are ostensibly original worlds, original characters, original concepts each time.
They connect
keep
themselves.
thematic elements.
Yeah,
it's
they stay connected by keeping some of the same themes, but a lot of it's just through item names, magic, spell titles, character names sometimes. Like
there's usually
Sid.
a crystal fucking somewhere in it.
Yeah, the concept of the overarching story of Final Fantasy started with it being a group of adventurers, the Warriors of Light, protecting, defending, acquiring some kind of crystal.
Is it just like the Dark Crystal? Is it just the story of the Jim Henson production of the Dark Crystal?
It's been so long since I've seen that, I couldn't tell you.
The land was green and good until the crystal cracked.
and every time they kill,
it quacked too.
It quacked.
There was a duck in there. It was a Howard the Duck tie-in. The movie, not the comics.
There was literally a giant, just crystal rubber duck.
So I came in.
Wait, does Howard the Duck have a rubber ducky in his own bath?
Probably.
Why?
Because it's
it
funny.
looks like him. Because you play with yourself in the bath.
Isn't that his kind of humor?
Got ya.
I mean, I don't take baths,
well,
so I can't speak to that.
You should try it.
I'm too big for the tub.
Yeah, so am I. So you put half yourself in and then you rotate.
What the fuck's the point of that? It sounds like a nightmare. Why can't I just
you
stand
get
under
in the
a shower?
bathtub and you rotate?
Yeah, what the fuck? Yeah, why is what you say
flap
making
around a little bit.
sense?
So I sit in the bathtub, my legs go all the way to the end, and my entire torso's out of the water.
Yeah,
so after about 5 minutes, I rotate, and I slide into the water.
I still don't think I understand it when you say rotate.
You just flip upside down and hold your breath.
He acts like a washing machine.
He does a barrel roll.
Yeah, he sits in the middle in a fetal position like a washing machine and just spins.
Not the roll axis, the pitch axis, okay?
But how's your yaw?
Oh, yeah. You beat me to it.
What's your yaw? What's your yaw in the bathtub?
Yaw varies because bathtubs are slippery, okay? Let's pitch.
Anyway, as you could relate because you're a little taller than me, right? So like, as people who are over 6'2", 6'2" and over, bathtubs are just not built for you.
No, they're not.
My bathtub currently is built for taller people. This is the
Everyone's taller than you.
Well, this is the first time I've actually wanted to take baths, but I take it and I'm like, this is cool. It's relaxing, but it feels stupid because you have to take a shower afterwards.
Yeah, I don't feel clean, and I know that's psychological because water is soluble, so I know it's all on me. But
it's just, the second I'm done with the bath, I'm like, well, getting in the shower now.
Well, need to rinse off.
Yeah.
I'm
I
the same way.
I have to.
Yeah.
To be fair, I haven't taken a bath 20 years.
I'm an adult man. I don't understand what you guys are doing.
I'm not going to lie. I took one a week ago after a long, 20-hour shift at work. It was the best goddamn thing I've ever done.
I clean myself by going to the river.
I
take my washboard into the river.
I put some Epsom salts and some essential oils in there, and I just laid. And I literally didn't move.
You still don't have utensils, and you have Epsom salts for your bathtub?
Yep.
I don't know the last time I've taken a bath. It's been a long time. I've been this tall since I was like 14, so it really hasn't worked out for a while.
I was born this tall.
I had to adapt, improvise, and overcome because I like bats. Okay?
I was one of those people where my growth spurts were pretty quick and drastic and painful. Like I was one of those people where like I like couldn't sleep at night because it hurt so much because
like your
I
bones and your
shot up
joints
feet.
hurt?
Yeah, I shot up. Like I haven't gotten much taller since I was 14. I've gotten maybe an inch taller over the last like 15 years. But from 11 to 14, it was like, how about 3 feet on you?
I vividly remember the growth spurts as being just a very constantly bodily painful part of my life.
Man, I'm glad I'm short.
What's a growth spurt?
Yeah.
Brian's like, I don't understand.
I believe I've been the same height since I was 2. I
You're
never
a
felt
hobbit,
these.
like.
I never felt these pains.
It's when your body stretches for no discernible reason and everything hurts because you're being stretched.
It's when your bones try to escape your body and your body tries to hold on, basically.
We want out.
Well,
It's like,
that's,
nope,
that's
stretch
the right
Armstrong.
thing to do. That spooky skeleton stays in you.
Yeah, that's basically a growth spurt. Anyway, Final Fantasy. 15 main entries at this point.
Well, more than that, I guess.
It's-
Well,
Yeah.
no, there's 15 mainline
main
Man
entries.
line. So,
with spin-offs and
Yeah.
just out of
adaptations.
curiosity, what was your first experience with Final Fantasy?
4. But it was called 2 here. Am I flipping that around? Or,
4 would have
1 was 1 here. 2 was actually
5. I think
Was
2
it? I
was
thought it was 3.
because 3 is 6. So 4 was 2. 5 didn't come out. You got 3, which was 6.
I didn't play 6.
Yeah.
Initially. I have
was
since
okay.
played it. I have a friend who 6 is his favorite. So
Most-
that's how I got introduced to it. So I played 4, and then my friend was super into it. I played 6 with him, and I played 7 with him, and 8 with him.
4.
But that was all later.
4 is the Dragoon Kane, right?
Yeah, it was Kane.
Yeah.
Who
Okay.
becomes a paladin towards the
Yeah,
end
yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Spoilers.
So I understood 4 to be 2. 4 was, I think, the first big real hit of the franchise here
Right.
in America, and then 7 was where it like blew up.
Yeah.
Right.
7
Which not just in America,
exploded.
because obviously what Square's done with 7 means it's pretty much blown up everywhere. And then 10 was big with my friends at the time
Well,
as
that's
well,
'cause-
but I couldn't get into
Yeah,
it.
well, 10 was big because it was the first one that was fully voice acted.
Yeah.
It was the most immersive Final
And
Fantasy
then
game.
I watched a friend play 12 and I laughed at him. Because I just didn't understand.
12 is a niche.
What's interesting about 12 to me is that it is actually aged
Better.
Gotcha.
It is a better game
then-
today than it was 10 years
Trying to
ago.
go through my full history here. So I played with my best friend. I was still in high school and she had just graduated. And she was living with 4 people. And their chore chart had Final Fantasy 11 in a single account up. Because that was the grind of that game at the time.
Oof.
And so I played 11 a lot with them, but never in any kind of order or context. Like every week I'd play like an hour of it, devoid of whatever they had done for the last week. Like, and then I watched my friend play 13. I've watched you guys play 14. And I've watched more of 15 than I care to even remember. And the person who played it didn't even finish it. And of course, I've seen the 2 classic films.
Yeah.
The Spirits Within. That movie.
That's pretty much it, though, as far as your exposure.
That was my first exposure, and then I think I saw someone, like one of my childhood friends, playing 7 briefly, but I don't remember much about it except thinking this game looks weird.
Yeah.
And then I played 14 like years later. I think I should check the other ones out now because clearly there's a lot of them, and clearly they're very popular.
You
so.
can skip more than half of them, but there are a few
That's never
that.
something I want to hear coming into a franchise.
Well, they're all different.
Well, that's 'cause they're all
they're
so
not connected.
devoid of
They,
each
they don't.
other.
You
Yeah.
don't need to. They're not related.
I will say that every Final Fantasy game is at least worthy of being played.
Yeah.
They're all good in their own regard, but there are some that are like
Better.
must plays,
Yeah.
basically.
Some can be considered masterpieces. Some of them are just good games.
I don't hear many people talk about 9 though.
Which that's
Which is weird because 9 actually is widely regarded by many as the best. one.
that's the funny thing is that as of the past few years, more and more people are coming out and basically realizing now or saying
Finally
that
having
9
played it, yeah.
They're like, damn, never mind, 9 is the best. Which
Interesting.
to me, 9 is my favorite.
Was
Gotcha.
9 the first MMO they launched? Because they have 2.
No, that was
MMOs.
11.
Okay, so they do have 2.
That was the
MMOs.
chore chart MMO.
Yeah.
They do have 2 of them.
Yeah.
2 MMOs.
And they're
Yes.
both
running right
and
now.
they're both running 11 and 14.
Right.
11 is very, very old and buggy.
Is 11 actually running
Yeah,
still?
it's still running.
Yeah, and there's
Like,
still
how many people are
they're
on
still
11?
updating it. A lot,
I wonder if it's those old roommates still on that chore chart,
probably.
working their asses off.
And their mini alts.
I've played both 11 and 14, and at the time when I played 11, it was the closest MMO I've ever found to EverQuest. I loved 11, but I know a lot of, like, right now there's no way in hell I'd play 11.
Oh,
I don't have the time to do that.
Well, I don't really see myself as an adult man ever replaying any of these. This is a patience I had only as a young person.
Yeah.
For
I can-
this style of RPG.
To an extent, I can agree, because, I mean, my first exposure to Final Fantasy was 7. Like, I make no qualms in saying when I was a kid, I had no understanding of an RPG or what the hell it was, or what the purpose was. So my first exposure was 7, just looked cool, and I never really got it for a while, and then my first real delve into a Final Fantasy was actually 8.
Yeah.
Was 8 after that, and that's where I
that
finally...
revolver sword in the Cadillac, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the game that really captured...
Like I remember
Final
the trailer for it more than I remember the game.
Most people do. Because 8's probably one of my favorites. Even though it gets treated like the redheaded stepchild of...
Yeah, like they recently decided to not port 8
Yeah,
to
they ported
Xbox
literally
or
every
Switch.
other one, but 8 has somehow left out in the cold.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
They did put it on PC. It's on PlayStation, but the recent ports of 7 and 9 that came to the Switch, came to the Xbox, they skipped 8. I like Final Fantasy 7. It wasn't... I don't think it was my first. I know I played a few of the Super Nintendo ones, but I never understood what they were. It was just, I don't know, look, these characters look cool, but then they're talking a lot and I'm getting bored. And
It's hard to
Right.
parse. I remember, like, I recently like looked at like 4 again and like 1 and 2, and I was like, it's hard to even parse what this is.
Yeah.
Just looking at it, it's not a graphics issue. It's just more of like a, I have no context for what anybody's doing or talking about, or I guess I'm in a mech. Is it a mech? Is it a statue? What is happening? Like which is, because like even like a game of similar graphics quality, if you look at like some of the older Zelda games, you have a context for what you're looking at. You're like, yeah, he's like an elf, like he's dressed like an elf and he's got a sword and it's very clear what you're looking at. Some of those old Final Fantasy games, I'm like, I don't know what this world is supposed to be. Is that an airship?
That's kind of what I
Okay.
always liked about it, is the mystical, like, new designs that haven't been explored and like just not knowing.
It's very weird.
But it all really comes together for me because of the soundtrack and the character
Right.
stories and the art. Like, it all just turns into this one big beautiful thing that I have always just been enthralled by. I have Final Fantasy soundtracks. I have Final Fantasy art books. I have owned every single one of the games on multiple consoles.
You own Advent Children?
I do. I own Advent Children. I, at one point, had Spirits Within on DVD. It's not good, but I had it.
I also had it on DVD. That's a past tense, but I did have it.
I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I saw it the day it came out.
same.
It was back when I saw everything in theaters, so I was just like, sure, why not?
Back when you had nothing but time.
Yeah, back when I thought my time was meaningless.
We watched Advent Children.
We did.
And
Advent Children Complete. A semi-remake. It's a director's cut, but it wasn't like these scenes were deleted. It was that they added them after the
Yeah,
fact.
because
Yeah.
the first original release of
Made
Advent
zero
Children
sense.
was a disjointed fucking nightmare.
Which is baffling when you think about what Advent Children Complete is, which is a disjointed nightmare.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't-
you're like, this made less sense at some point.
when it first
Yeah.
came out, maybe I was more into Final Fantasy then. But when that movie first came out, I was extremely excited. I watched it. I was kind of scratching my head like, what is this?
Yep.
Having now seen that movie at least 10 times, I could not give a shit about that movie.
It kind of reminds me of those 70s reunions of TV shows.
Kinda.
Where there's like Gilligan's Island reunion, where it's sort of loosely got a narrative to understand why they're coming back, but in reality, it's just sort of like a greatest hits.
This movie was
And the
made.
cast is back. That's kind of what this is.
That movie was made specifically to just get fans to be like, to shut up. Here's your characters. Give us your money. You're good.
Yeah, it's like, how can we just have Cloud and Sephiroth fight?
Yeah.
So this movie, Advent Children Complete, is a sequel, one of the very few sequels of this in this series, right? Of the game 7, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They've
Which
been
actually-
doing that a lot more lately.
10 has a sequel, 13 has a sequel.
13 has 2
Yeah,
sequels.
13 has 2 sequels.
So there's a 13-3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus.
It's Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 13-2.
Yeah.
And then it's Final Fantasy Lightning Returns 13-3.
Great.
And then Final Fantasy 15, rather than doing a 15-2, they just put out a bunch of expansions. Which has
then
now...
they just cancel the most
They
recent.
canceled most of them because people were going, we're not buying these. I don't give a shit.
I don't want to drive more.
Apparently where
It
the
gets
game...
a lot of driving.
Apparently where that game stands right now is how it should have released at launch, and apparently it's a much better game. I still don't know that I could be bothered to play it.
So like No Man's Sky. They released an incompleted title and then finished it years
I
after
think
the fact.
of the people I know, I'm the only one that actually finished 15.
How did it end?
Poorly.
I watched that Kingsglaive movie.
It essentially ended with him having a Dragon Ball Z style fight with Arden, the guy that was the main antagonist,
Isn't that how that Kingsglaive movie ended too?
pretty much.
Okay.
So it ended with that fight, and then it ended with basically Noctis
Jesus.
sitting down and dying.
Jesus Christ, I've seen 3 Final Fantasy movies. What the hell?
There was also an anime series.
For 15.
No, like just a Final Fantasy
Oh,
anime.
yeah.
That was its own original story as
Yeah,
well,
forever
right?
ago, yeah.
Which I never saw. But I saw the 7 OVA.
I just want to go on record to say that Final Fantasy VII is extremely overrated.
Absolutely.
And I get why people like it. It's probably a lot of people's first RPGs that they actually
Well, it's also
played through.
of all the ones I've played, it's the cleanest narrative.
yeah.
It doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, but it's the easiest to attach to. You have a very easy to understand main character. You have a very easy to understand arc. Like having seen the entire story of 15. It's a fucking mess, you know. I'm like 13. I'm like, there's no basics. There's no inciting incident. There's no like clear like goal. Whereas 7, from the get go, you have a really clear understanding of like who your main character is and what you want to do. So it's very easy to latch onto. That's why it was the first one to gain a lot of popularity, because they're dense. Like the other ones are dense and like kind of impenetrable, and 7 kind of went for a much more cleaner character narrative. And then after that, they never really tried that again. They're like, let's really complicate the shit out of this again. And I think that's why 7 is still the most popular one.
And it
amongst
also just
people.
has Sephiroth, which most people just immediately are
Well,
like,
again, a clear,
this guy's a
understandable,
badass.
distinct villain.
Yeah.
Clear hero, clear villain, clear story. People like that. People like
Yeah.
clarity. People don't want 60,000 characters with backstories you didn't get to see. You know?
Yeah, I mean, like 8's all over the place. 9 has a lot of characters and changes a lot.
It's a dude with a sword fighting another dude with a sword. They don't like each other. They're kind of like brothers. Easy. Sold in the room.
Anyway,
So Advent Children is 6 or 7 opening scenes, and then it cuts away from action a lot. Like in terms of, by action I mean like events. It's like there's somebody knocks at the door, and then it cuts away, and it comes back, and he's like, "Anyway, I interrogated those people," and I'm like, I probably should have seen that.
Yeah.
Off camera, I did stuff, and you're like, why did we cut away?
But I wanted to see that stuff.
That seems important to this story.
It just seems so boring.
Well, that's because it's a film that...
That's because it keeps
ultimately-
cutting away from
Well,
the
right.
story.
It requires you to know so much about the prior installment, which is 7, to be able to even grasp what's going on.
And even
they try to give you a little backstory. It just doesn't
Not-
help.
no.
And even then, shit has happened off camera that it's like, it's a new paradigm. And then even then, all the characters from 7 aren't there. And then they just show up at the end, and it's like, I guess you are in this
like
story.
you showed me Red 13 at the very beginning of the movie running with his kids. Great. Why all of a sudden did he show up at the very middle of Act 3 with Kate Sith on his fucking back? Who you
to do
hadn't,
nothing.
Yeah, who you hadn't shown me at all up until this
Yeah,
point.
6 or 7 like primary characters from the game just show up in the 3rd act, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess you are in this.
Because they had to. They're like, here you go.
I-
They're
yeah.
here.
But then they should
But that's not good story.
they should have just been there from the beginning. Because even as someone who knows who they are, I'm like, why are you here? You weren't here for the rest of it.
Yeah, and when did this phone call happen where they're just like, by the way, end of the world, you guys want to come?
It's like watching The Empire Strikes Back, and you've seen Star Wars, but then Han Solo is inexplicably not in the movie, and then just shows up at Bespin in the last 20 minutes, and you're like, wait, why?
So it seems weird to me that in every Final Fantasy game, you fight with a group of people, your friends. You have like
A party.
a party. So why in this movie is it a solo fight? Why, like, you have the characters, they're there. Why is it not a party?
Well, they fight the dragon together.
it's a better movie if it's just a solo hero's journey.
I guess, but this
We already had the hero's
this
journey.
movie didn't do it.
As someone
Like-
who has never played 7, I thought it worked really well.
It
We-
would make
7
more
wa-
sense if he died.
Well, right. Final Fantasy VII was the hero's journey.
No.
Like, we already saw that arc.
I
Like,
didn't,
that, again, this film assumes you did.
but I didn't.
This
But even
this
then, even
movie-
if you did, it still doesn't make sense.
right,
Yeah.
the movie was made specifically for fans, but then even then, it's still just kind of
It
a
doesn't
mess.
make sense. Like, it doesn't have... Like, knowledge of 7 doesn't help the movie.
No.
It helps you know who's on the screen. That's about it.
Yeah, you're like,
And
that's
even-
Well,
Barrett
even then,
for some reason.
sometimes.
Well, right. Well, even the characters they introduce for this film that you have never seen before, I still don't understand their motivations by the end of it.
Yeah.
Well, because the movie acts like you should know who they are too already. Because everyone else does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, everyone else who we do know from the game is like, yeah, I know them. And I'm like, oh. It's like, this is the third movie, and
Yeah.
we missed the second one.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the third part of the story. It's like, well, you all weren't here for the real Final Fantasy 2. Y'all missed that. It's like Tron Legacy all over again, where it's like, well, actually, the Tron Legacy is really Tron 3, and Tron 2 happened in the 90s, so let me spend 20 minutes of Tron Legacy filling you in on a bunch of backstory you didn't get to see. And I'm like, why are you doing this?
At least you have the Daft Punk soundtrack. As a whole, I understand parts of the Final Fantasy VII story.
It does seem up your alley, given your Neon Genesis Evangelion kind of deal, because it's like, would you like more ways to retell this? And you're like, yeah, more.
Yeah,
please.
I would like to see
Do you
this
understand?
story for the
do you,
fifth time.
Do you understand it better? No, no. If anything, I understand it less the more you tell me.
Yeah,
You told
every
me
time.
this again, and I know less. Could you tell it to me again?
I've probably read, watched, and listened to Evangelion in every...
Was there a radio play on that?
I'm making it next week.
At this point, I can't imagine that there isn't.
drama.
I don't know.
I can only imagine that there's a pop-up book as well.
Have you seen the Black Box stage play of Neon Genesis Evangelion?
I went last week.
When's that third movie or fourth movie come out?
Next year.
And then what's he gonna do?
Evangelion again.
This time it's a show again. Also, I just found out that the fourth movie is not called Evangelion 4.0. It's called 3.0 plus 1.0.
Yeah.
That's the most pretentious shit I've ever heard. Half-Life 4 minus 1, you will not get the game.
And not will be in a parenthetical. Like
Yes.
all these Evangelion movies.
Exactly. How do you defend this?
I will defend it to the day I die. I love Evangelion.
I like that show.
I liked it the first time I saw it. This is your fault. I blame Evangelion for all of this.
Why
I don't know-
did you
I don't know how
segue?
we're here. We're talking
Why
about
did
Final
you segue
Fantasy.
into Evangelion?
I don't.
We should be talking about people with weird zipper pants, crazy hair, and giant swords. Not.
We'll review this later and figure out how we got the how
It's
did
a good
we
we
get
were
here?
recording this.
I don't want to be here.
I
This
think
is
it was-
not my beautiful house. This is
some-
not my beautiful wife.
I don't understand that reference. What is that from? By.
I don't remember.
Okay, great, thanks. Sometimes I think you guys just actually make stuff up because every once in a while I'll be like, "Where's that from?" And it becomes clear. It almost feels like you're making up an answer. You're like, "It's a song." Well, oh, what kind of song? You know.
I wrote it.
Gotta go!
I wrote it an hour ago.
Sometimes I feel like these aren't references. You guys are just speaking gibberish and laughing at it because sometimes I literally get answers where you're like, "I don't know, it's a thing."
Well, now I have carte blanche to start doing that.
I just assume you already are.
It's the power of our memes, David.
Because it's like the explanation of what it is falls apart almost immediately sometimes.
Yes.
It's a song from a place and time.
These are facts that cannot be refuted.
What's Final Fantasy 14 about?
We could talk for like the next week about
Yeah,
that.
14
They're
is
so.
What's the basic?
fucking
What's
much.
the pitch?
It's
What's
a
the
theme
basic?
park.
What's the basic premise?
It is
But
a
like, there's
theme
a
park.
story, right? Like, what's like
Right.
what's the log line?
The first game before all the expansions was more or less The Empire Strikes Back.
Kinda.
It's a very heavily Star Wars influenced story.
Okay.
This one was actually unique because of that. The
This
world
Star Wars
event.
ripoff was unique
No,
because
no. The
this
world, the
time-
world event that happened on all the servers.
Well, you're talking about okay. So when Final Fantasy 14 first launched, it was a fucking nightmare. It was a disaster. It was completely broken. Systems didn't work. The game was to the point of being unplayable. It actually punished you for playing it for too long, where you would start getting diminishing returns.
it withdrawed money from your bank account.
Well, it
Actually, if I
does
recall
Are you
correctly,
asking?
World of Warcraft did the same thing in its early days.
Is
Right.
there any MMO that's ever launched and people were like nailed it?
World of
Because it
Warcraft.
sounds like every
No, World of
See,
Warcraft
it
did
sounds like every MMO you guys talk about, they're like the launch was the worst launch in history of any MMO MMO.
World of Warcraft had
Did
launch.
anyone ever do this?
World
right?
of Warcraft
No.
had launch issues as far as server, but that game sold out in every fucking store.
That's not what I'm
Right,
asking.
and that doesn't mean that
I'm not
people
asking
didn't-
about whether or
no,
not successful.
people loved the shit.
Well,
out
no,
of it.
people bitched.
People love the shit of the
incessantly.
people love the shit out of the Transformers movies. Doesn't mean shit.
The original-
What
the
did it
original-
work?
Yeah, vanilla
But-
WoW launch was it.
But what I'm
was-
saying is, people loved it enough to where you are getting a vanilla WoW again. Whereas you will never see Final Fantasy 14 vanilla ever.
Well,
It's
right.
not
That's
possible.
because it wasn't the fact that it.
It's not
WoW.
possible. It was
right.
burned.
No, like the game engine was script based, so everything in the game was running on a script, and scripts would randomly stall or break on the client or server, causing a cascading failure of game breaking bugs. So if someone did a quest and there was a glitch in a line of code, that would cause everybody on the server to have a cascading series of issues.
Now, are you talking about Final Fantasy?
I'm
Or...
talking about 14's original
Yeah.
launch. The game engine, from a technical perspective,
Yeah, it was shit.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants a deeper insight into this, there is a YouTube series called No Clip. Danny O'Dwyer, he did a really long episode on the rise and fall of 14 and how it ended up relaunching, and it's a fascinating watch, actually.
they killed everybody in the game. The game world was permanently changed, and then when they relaunched, was it like a month or two later?
No, it was like a year later.
It took them a year or something to completely rebuild it, relaunch it. And I read reviews saying that this is the best MMO we've played.
Gotcha.
They have taken this game and they've completely turned it around. You need to play this. Because I grabbed it and I think I told you almost immediately, like, yo, we need to get this.
Yep.
And then I was hooked almost immediately for probably 3 years. Through the initial game, up through the first expansion.
So like, what would it take for like? So it takes something like that for like to get you to go to like Anthem, given how
Absolutely.
disastrous.
Oh,
yeah.
yes. With Anthem at this
Like they have
point,
to rebuild the game.
they would
basically.
need to rebuild it from the ground up for me to even consider it.
I never considered Anthem to begin with. I don't think you could ever sell me Anthem. But
A complete redo might end up being a complete disaster, or it might not. But either way, it's a lot easier.
But it'll be a whole new disaster.
right. It's a lot easier as a gamer to approach
But-
it as, okay, well, this is a different title that might be closer to what I hoped
We're not,
the original was.
we're not
That-
making the mistakes. We're not
that's-
making the same mistakes again. No, you're making all new ones.
that scenario almost never exists.
Right.
Final Fantasy 14 should not exist right now.
Yeah, it
The
is
only
a
reason it
huge
did
outlier.
is that the company basically said, our name is Final Fantasy. We have to make this work or we're going fucking bankrupt. And the creator, or
The creative director they brought in
Yeah.
was they just happened to find somebody who was brilliant.
and he
Like they just got fucking lucky with who they had available to fix this.
and he pulled a fucking miracle out of his ass and flipped it into a game that people fell in love with.
Interesting.
That you'll never see that again, probably.
No, I don't.
This was a once in a lifetime. Like he pulled a fucking miracle.
I can't even imagine WoW getting back to its current numbers if they decided to shut down the game for a full
For a year, yeah.
and then come back later and be like, we relaunched it with all the problems.
Well,
that
the
everyone's
best
complaining
part
about gone."
was when this game was broken, so they brought this guy in to kind of start to try to fix it. And eventually he started fixing certain things, but ultimately came back to say that, look, fundamentally this is broken from the ground up. I can't just keep band-aiding this. It won't work. So he pitched the idea to them of starting over. And they were just like, you're insane, but we believe in you. We have faith that we can make this work. So they started working on the new game to replace it, while at the same time continuing to provide minor patches and changes for the existing one, just to keep people who still wanted to play it playing it. And then eventually they launched a multi-server wide event that brought about essentially the end of the world. They a huge calamity, basically a meteor slamming into this world.
Sound familiar?
Right.
No, I don't know what that's around.
Yeah.
I've never heard about that in Final Fantasy. Tell me
and
more.
they did this huge end of the world event where essentially they were just like, all right, people are just going to keep fighting enemies, like wave after wave of enemies as this meteor comes down until ultimately the servers are dead, until we kill it. And people fucking loved it, and then the servers died. And then a year later, they relaunched, and anybody obviously that had characters, they gave them special gifts and stuff like that for coming back and let them try to reload their characters again. But in a game that was much more reminiscent of, say, something like World of Warcraft. That's why Anthem. This isn't going to happen with Anthem.
No.
But EA will cut their fucking losses. They will let BioWare bleed to death, and they will call it a day.
It's also weird too because so they buy BioWare 3, so really the 2 Mass Effect games and the first Dragon Age game.
Well, BioWare was already owned by EA by that point.
Yeah.
When they made the first Mass Effect.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. They've had BioWare for a long
They've
time.
had BioWare like the
Jade Empire.
Yeah, Jade Empire was the last
Really?
game they made before. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why they acquired them. Because your analogy saying why would Disney buy
But
DC?
I was under the impression they bought them like
No.
10 years
They've
ago.
had them for
But they've owned them
a
for like
long
20
time.
years.
Yeah,
ago.
they've owned them
20
for a
years. Okay,
long
never
time.
mind then. No.
Not 20 years, but it's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
Same with like Visceral Games. They made the Dead Space games, and
They were.
they were all EA though.
BioWare was acquired by EA in 2007.
Yeah.
It's about 10 years ago. But the Mass Effect games started in 2007. For some reason, I pegged them so much earlier, and I don't know why.
So the first Mass Effect was released 2007.
Yeah.
Which means that they were working on it prior to the
Yes.
acquisition.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why EA.
But
That's why the
for
first
some
one
reason, I
doesn't have
pegged.
MTX.
I don't know why, but Mass Effect was earlier in my head. But I was like, no, I could swear you bought BioWare like 10-ish years ago, which is true. It's just Mass Effect was all in. Mass Effect is only 12 years old, which is baffling to me. It feels
Holy crap! It's already 12 years old.
yeah.
Yeah, to me, it feels like much older.
No.
Feels more recent.
Like
to me.
I would have guessed 3 came out in 2008, which obviously it did not.
No, that was
2013.
12. It was,
Yeah.
that was 12, I think.
Look, once
2012,
once you pass 30, it's all the same.
Yep.
20 years, 10 years, you're just like, I don't know. When did that happen? I don't know. The Crimean War? I don't know. Who was Mass Effect 2?
When did the Ottoman Empire fall?
Yeah, around the time Mass Effect 2 came out, right?
Yeah.
And then the big one that was a couple days ago is Borderlands 3, which I'm less and less excited about every day.
I'm getting to the point where I'm just like, I don't know that I would even be willing to pirate it at this point.
Well, I watched.
Which we would never do.
No, God, no. I'm a good, upstanding citizen.
I would never steal a car.
I watched.
I would download a car.
I watched gameplay of Borderlands
No, he
3,
wouldn't.
and it looks different. It looks
It
slower.
looked
It
like-
looks weird.
You know what it looked like?
Doom.
Destiny.
It looks like Doom to me.
No, it looked like
But-
Destiny.
No, it looked like Destiny.
I feel like it just
The
looked
Borderlands
like.
games were never that good. They were just fun to play with
No,
friends.
Borderlands 2 is amazing. I love that game.
No, I went.
I've been playing it.
I
with
know,
Tilly.
and I've gone back and I've played Borderlands 2, and you know what? I'm missing a lot of basic functionality.
Well, yeah, you're missing the past 10 years of development that we've gone. Yeah, I mean, but that doesn't change the fact that it was a good game 10 years ago.
It was a good game for how shallow it really is.
It really doesn't have that much depth. The first one or the second one, and I played both of them single player.
Oh no, the first one's awful. Now I've tried to go back and play the first one. The first one's crap.
Does it?
now.
Does a game need to hold up against time to
Yes.
be considered good for you?
No.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
That's the difference.
No, I
I
do
need
not
it
think
to-
it does. You cannot tell me that a game, I don't know, like,
I don't. Well, here's the thing: is our games a form of art?
yeah.
Then yes,
They need to stand
standing
the
the test of time is
That is part of
is
good
a bit of a
art.
principle of how art informs a culture, because art has to inform the culture, and the longer the art informs the culture, or the new things art brings to that culture as culture evolves and changes, that's how art
You know how
lives
you
and breathes.
said
There
that
are
the first Final Fantasy holds up really well?
Yeah.
That's because
That's 'cause
that
it's-
game
well, it's
is
pixel art,
Well,
that's why.
right, but it's also because the fundamental basics of that game
Yeah.
just work. Tetris is art because it stands up against the test of time.
Well, there's-
Tetris will probably outlive every video game ever.
Right, and because despite how simple a fucking concept is, it's always good.
Like in 1,000 years, nobody's gonna know what Mario is, but I almost guarantee you Tetris will be playable somewhere in some form.
There are-
assuming people are
There are
still around.
countless
and the
games.
original Doom will still be playable.
Assuming
on
we're
your smartwatch.
not heat deft.
There are countless games for the PlayStation 1 that do not hold up in terms of graphics or controls, especially because that was before analog, and just having the D-pad in a 3D environment does not work. But there are definitely games that I still love.
So the equation I would give you there is there are movies from the 50s that were shot in 3D, and guess what?
Yeah, it doesn't work.
fucking work.
No.
Those movies are pretty bad.
yeah.
They don't work anymore. They never did, really, but we put up with it.
I mean, like Vagrant Story. I don't know if anyone else has played that.
I know of it. I don't know that. I don't think I've played it.
It is hideous. Like the character models, because it was the first, like, not the first, but it was a attempt at making a 3D tactical RPG.
Does it still control well?
It never controlled well, but it's still a damn good game. It's just
movie
it's
was
awkward.
out of-
That's still, but that's
Movie was out of focus the whole time.
yeah.
Book was written backwards.
But
Sorry.
that's the other thing is art is subjective. But there are
Yeah.
still things that are objectively
it is,
everyone
but-
agrees they are masterpieces.
All art is
Vagrant
subjective. All art
Story
is
is definitely
subjective, but culture is a fluid thing, and we do have a general consensus of aesthetics in art, and we do have a general consensus of what's important to us as a culture, and that's how art informs it. And so there are pieces of art that, even if I don't personally connect to them, I find fascinating because they clearly have connected to our culture, which really, I guess, is the mission statement of this podcast in a weird, highfalutin way, because we're talking about what reconnects to people and us.
right.
Actually, yeah, there you go.
The road to Mandy notwithstanding.
No, just I'm fascinated by Nicolas Cage. He's got to be the most memed actor, right?
Yeah, it's either him or Ewan McGregor at this point.
Yeah, but that's like the same meme. Whereas Nicolas Cage, it's like 20 years of memes of his career. like
true.
not a lot of shallow grave Ian McGregor memes. It's basically episode 2,
I don't
right?
know, I'm starting that subreddit.
Ian McGregor memes that aren't Star Wars memes, and you're like, is this a gift from Eye of the Beholder? This one's from A Life Less Ordinary. Yeah,
I got this one from Big
Your
Fish.
submission has been removed.
Yeah, but I do think that that's the culture of it. So if video games, part of it does have to be like, does this still have any kind of impact on culture?
Which a game like Mario, the original Mario, absolutely still does.
Also, Mario's had a consistent track record of impact on culture, where Mario 3, the Mario Kart franchise, like Smash Brothers, which wouldn't be named that if not for Super Mario Brothers, wouldn't be named Super Smash Brothers. Mario wouldn't be front and center. He's had a lot of games, and honestly, we probably remember conservatively 6 of them really favorable of the 30 there's had to have been.
More than that.
Yeah, like 50. Like nobody remembers Wario 3D.
I mean, I remember Wario.
Meh.
I played a lot of Wario on my Virtual Boy.
You had a Virtual Boy?
What?
I'm sure you've told me
How
this,
are
but
you
I'm
not-
shocked every
Well,
time.
that explains the glasses.
I sold my Virtual Boy probably 10 years ago. And guess what game I bought with the money I got from
Final
the Virtual
Fantasy.
Boy? Final Fantasy 7.
It all comes around.
I don't think I have it anymore,
I
though.
can't see
It
red
won-
Sephiroth. Are you colorblind? Can you see red?
Yeah.
No.
Can you see
Okay.
Wario?
No.
Do you see Wario here right now? From
can't
the
see-
Virtual Boy?
Every
see
time I
anything.
close my eyes, that's
Every
all
time I
say.
close my eyes, I see Wario. Every time I wake up and I go, wah!
I had a Virtual Boy and I had 3 games. I had, I think it was Wario
You had the 3 games available on the Virtual Boy.
Right. I had Red Alert, or Red Alarm, I believe. It was like a 3D Star Fox thing. Wario 3 and Mario Tennis. Those were the only games I think you could
I don't even think
get.
it was called Mario Tennis. I think it was just called Tennis.
Tennis with Mario. But
Mario teaches typing.
I did not have Final
Mario's
Fantasy
your
for the
driver's
Virtual Boy.
instructor.
Now, Mario teaches typing was a thing.
I know, but now in my head I'm like, Mario's your driver instructor.
Yeah.
Mario's gonna teach you basic CPR.
Hygiene with Mario.
Bro.
Don't forget to wash your foreskin.
I don't need Mario anywhere near that.
That's more of a Luigi. Yeah, that's more of a Luigi job. Mario's like, you do that one, Luigi. I'm gonna leave the comedy traffic school to Wario. I gotta walk up to you all today to make sure you haven't been drinking before this class. Wah.
Wario trains you to be a certified public accountant.
Today we're gonna learn emergency doom preparation. Wah. Do you all know what a go bag is? Wah. These rations will last you for a week.
These are called burner phones. They don't leave trace. Wah! Wario teaches counter espionage.
If you think you have a tail, I'm gonna teach you today how to double back. Wah. They're all 80s VHS how-to tapes with Wario that you could rent at Blockbuster. Today I'm going to teach you about the new sensation, the internet. Wah!
While Luigi teaches you to install America Online.
Kids, today, by mandate of the court, I will be teaching you how to avoid sexual predators online. Wah! Anyway, was that how Virtual Wario was?
Yeah, I hope so.
Exactly.
In Virtual Wario?
That was all there was to it.
You've been listening to Cattywampus. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr at CattyWampusPod. Email us at cattywampuspodcast@gmail.com. Music by Tilly.